Well, the play's a little bit out of sequence chronologically, so it obviously starts in the first act in 2008, like Damien's present day when he's writing the book. So you first see Heather in the play when they're around 28 years old. So she's come down to Brighton to visit him while he's piecing together his life, essentially, for this memoir. But then chronologically, you first meet her at school, so the first time that her and Damien meet.
With Maggie, I guess she just gets exploded in from the from the past or future or something into his brain at the Brighton bombing. So she just, gets blown through a wardrobe into his head. Before I started rehearsal, because I knew I was playing Margaret Thatcher, I just sat and had to go back and watch Margaret Thatcher and kind of look at her mannerisms, look at her speech patterns. What I did find was I just Googled videos and looked at the kind of famous speeches and famous quotes and kind of got those little mannerisms that she always had that are very Margaret Thatcher. But I knew that if you're doing her in a play and it was somebody's brain and it was about his relationship with her, and I hadn't seen a completed script or anything, so I didn't know how it was going to be. So I wanted to try and find videos of her as a person more, just speaking off camera almost. And I did manage to find videos where there was one really good one when she'd actually been papped out finally, of her being interviewed after, and she was much more herself, if you know what I mean, a bit more relaxed, a bit more herself. There was a couple of interviews abroad where she was a little bit herself, and there was actually an off-camera one where she was getting interviewed, and it was them all setting up, and they had this little footage of her just chatting to the guy, asking him things. She was talking about, do you want this little figurine here because I've seen it before and it looked like it was coming out of my ear, is it okay there? Little daft things that she was saying just as very much her, and that was really helpful because I was like, okay, she had a slightly naughty sense of humour. She was talking about her neck and how your neck goes first and whether she'd get it done and things like this. So that was fun just to see. And also I watched her on Swap Shop because I wanted to see how she was with children. And I remembered her being on Swap Shop, and I remember her not coping with it very well.
Great.
At first, because some kid had started going, where will you be in the event of a nuclear war? Will you be in the bunker? And she was like, well, you could see her getting a bit, you're not supposed to ask me things like that. But then they made her watch 4 music videos, and give opinions on them, give your out of 10s. So that was quite fun, because it kind of went, okay, there is a person in there somewhere. That's what I did pre-rehearsal.
For me, I would say that I'm playing other characters just as much as Heather, to be totally honest. So it was kind of a very split focus, and Heather really comes to the fore in Act 4. Without really knowing what was going to be in there, I had to kind of focus more on the beginning of the play. But with the read-through, certainly, we just had to kind of dive into voices or whatever. I remember just doing a lot of different voices and seeing what kind of fitted. And really up until, even in rehearsals, I wasn't sure if I was doing Mary the Canary. There was chat about you being the newsreader. It was all very very movable parts.
You were originally the therapist?
I was originally the therapist, and then because we cut the
you had a quick change, and quick changes meant it was like, that's impossible.
Yeah, so all of that stuff was all up in the air. So in terms of prep, I learnt the lines, which was a waste of time, which I did know would be a waste of time, but I just thought it's going to stick pretty much close to this. I really like being off book as much as possible prior to rehearsals because I just can't play with a script in my hand. I really don't like it. There was a lot that changed, obviously, but at least I had a vague idea of some of the more complicated lines have actually stayed quite similar. So yeah, that was my main thing. And then with Heather, for me, she's the most me of all of the characters. Like, I'm from North Lanarkshire, I'm from near where, Heather and Damien are from. I'm queer myself. I don't know, I identified a lot with it. I read the book, during the audition process, which just to kind of get some more flavour of the different characters in the world and things. We always had a draft of this. I mean, we were working through full drafts in the R&D days, but they weren't actually in the room as much as writers would usually be because they were constantly writing. Every day
they were in the
writing.
room once, that was it.
Yeah, they were constantly writing. So we would come in one day and we would kind of think something was solidified and then it would be changed, it was definitely difficult, especially if you kind of quite a few times we were like, oh, we've locked into something that we enjoy and we've found a way to do it, and then it changes and you're like, ah! Like, I do think we all had very good dramaturgical writing heads, and we all did have offers and we all did have ideas. It did become a lot of cooks. Like, it was a lot of cooks trying to really make something the best it could be, because we really all cared about the story.
Yeah.
Like,
it was like development for too many weeks. And it was
Yeah,
like,
it
this
was
is not
hard.
rehearsal. Rehearsal is, we've done a lot of new writing, and
Yeah.
you do come in, and new writing always evolves, because it's bound to, the minute you stand up and you say words out loud, the writers themselves will go, it's not sounding right coming out. And it's not because you're saying it wrong,
Yeah.
it's because, no, that doesn't work out of someone's
Yeah.
mouth in the same way. So they go away and they just finesse it. And maybe things change. Things can change quite a lot sometimes in terms of, look, actually that whole scene
yeah.
we're not going
and
to
in
do, or
previews
the
as well, it
ending.
can happen quite
Yeah.
late, but you feel like you've got a
Yeah, you've got a
grasp on
solid
it.
basis. You've usually got like an 80% solid basis. You know the arc of the story, you know the characters, you know where you want the journey to go, or where you think you want the journey to go. And then the actors come in, and they basically, their job is, or I personally think an actor's job is to take that character, develop it, bring it to life, and then the writer's able to go, actually, I want that character to do a bit more of this, or I want that character to do less of that and more of this. And so you end up with that 20% is finessing it to get to the stage, whereas this really was like a development thing of, we don't know what the characters are going to do. We don't really know what bits of the story, because the story's so huge, and you're trying to take a book that maybe, I don't know, does a book take 10 hours to read?
Well, it's on a life. It's a
It's
28-year-old's
an
life.
entire life, and you're trying to squeeze it into 2 hours. That's a really huge challenge. So I don't envy them.
God,
That's
yeah,
a
no.
massive challenge. So how do you peel away and get the important parts? And things like bringing in Margaret Thatcher in the book. She's not in the book.
Yeah.
She's just headers, you know. And so Damien, I think, bless him, had to face a lot. Like he says in the play, I really want to tell my story. And the therapist actually has the line about sometimes re-engaging with your trauma can in itself be re-traumatizing. I think it's really hard for him to come in and suddenly squish his life into 2 hours. I mean, it must have been traumatizing to write, but it's him and his page, and then it's in a paper, and it's safe, and it's sort of there. Putting something on stage is suddenly, you're handing your story to other human beings who are going to put their little part in it. You're telling it out loud. You're showing things in a very visceral way. So it's a much...
And the rhythm, it's a different rhythm as well.
Different
the rhythm
rhythm,
of each scene,
different
and
arc.
driving it forward, and there being a reason for every single scene,
different
and what
way
happens.
of storytelling.
Yeah,
And I
totally.
think that can be very challenging.
It was so technical as well, so we had to start working on the technical elements from the rehearsal room. We had Susan Baer, that was a sound designer, and Tim, that was all AV stuff. Like, they were in the rehearsal room, like, from week 2, I think.
Which is really,
Really
which is a
good.
luxury. I mean, that's definitely where you've got National Theatre's
Yeah.
got they have the money to do that, and it's one of those things that doesn't normally happen in theatre, and it's an amazing luxury to have that they are there on the spot to go, you know. Suze, for example, if at this point there's a dripping tap or something, give me a minute, dripping tap appears,
that's great.
Or Tim, at one point, they were playing frog tennis, and he's like, I want a frog on the scene. And I'd worked with him before with puppets, and he sort of went, can me and you go in a corner and just play with a puppet? I was like, yeah. So, you know, you're suddenly and then the next day he's got Kermit the Frog flying up in the air, and he's playing with images as people are talking. He's hearing what an actor says and going, there's an image of a rocking horse then. And
Because you're
that
playing
was
off
exciting.
of that. We're playing off the TVs. We're playing off the cameras were a huge part of it. It adds so much. Like, it's such a technical show. And then even like things like the quick changes, we were having to work that in, because some of that was like, oh, we'll cut this bit, and we're like, I can't get right. That can't happen, or, you know.
And it's like Noises Off backstage. It's great.
I wish.
If you've never seen Noises Off, it's a play. Go read it, because it's it's that thing of just seeing an entire different play happening backstage. I sit there at one point. It's great because Maggie's all the time. I was like, use a camera. No, I'm Maggie. Maggie doesn't pick up cameras. So I get to sit backstage a lot. And at one point, I was a bit early in the run, I was kind of like, this is great. I'm sitting there, and I just saw you go, and then Sam go, and then Douglas went that way and put on a tash and that way, and I'm just like,
We're
this is
leaping
great.
over.
This is just, better keep my legs out the way. I'm going to trip somebody up, you know.
And the
It's
Tron,
just fab.
the pass at the back is so thin, and I remember like literally like leaping over Douglas in his pants at one point. I was like, whoo, like.
You looked up and I was like, Sam's coming in at Douglas, and he was like, okay.
I get that all the time with like Heather, especially because my first quick change into Heather is so fast. from the bullies, like it's a really quick change and I'm literally on for the strawberry milkshake bit. And then I run round, I've moved my socks so that I've got the pink on, but I'm going right round the back of the stage. And this, what I'm hoping is achieving this, I've gone off and then I've magically appeared here, but I am absolutely pelting it. And then it's that thing of trying to, Nicola Joe as well has got a couple into the mum that's so fast, and then you've got to come in and try and be calm, delve into that character, delve into that part of the story, even though all you've been stressing about is just like, you know,
got
it's
one.
so hard. Yeah, you've got freaking one.
I mean, yes, she's not a very popular figure. Well, certainly not in Scotland. She's not a very popular figure. And you've heard this ad nauseum, but I grew up, I was 7 when she got in, I was 18 when she got out. So she was basically my life and this horrific presence in our lives. And it couldn't be an impression because the play was about his imagining of her and that he helped her. And she, you know, she's in frog tennis and she's coming in V-boobs and stuff. You know, Margaret Thatcher would never do that. So it had to be this fine line of, okay, do take a sort of basic impression and then take the person that helped Damien, even though that was a very stern, very Thatcherite attitude, and sort of amalgamate the two. And then she does talk a lot in quotes and stuff as well. So it is a sort of tricky balance to play. In my head, for example, I was talking to Sam about this yesterday. In my head, when she first sees VDB, she kind of goes, "Oh, that's you as a child. Okay, so you've brought me into your mind because apparently I helped you, right? Then, oh, you're an intelligent child. I like that, you know." So this kind of human being going, he's quite fun. He likes science, you know, and the sort of letting a maternal side of her come out somehow, and a sense of humour come out somehow that she must have had. It's such an old cliche, but I kind of give them a physicality or something. I give them a phrase that I can say. Like for Maggie, it's no, 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 because she always sort of said that in a certain way. So I give them a phrase and I give them something physical so that once the costume's on, I can always have that as a base to go back to if I'm on stage and go, I don't know who I am. It's like, remember, it's no, 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 and you do that, or whatever, you know. That's my personal thing, but I think every actor's got their own way to kind of take it and shed it and move on to the next one.
In terms of like Heather's like flip moment, it's frustrating because the flip moment happens in the scene where she meets DB for the first time, because she gets bullied too and she gets, you know, called names and can't fit in. It's definitely that moment where he starts to quote literature, and it's like she just sees everybody as someone that's going to bully her, and she just, you know, put this milkshake over her to like impress a friend. And oh, it's so nice piecing these things together. Even now I'm like, oh yeah, because we're just so often going through the motions of just trying to get the play on and I'm like, oh yeah, like seeing him as this enemy, and then he quotes the things that only she understands, and then I doubt that this is exactly what happened to Damien, but we have to move quickly through this play. So like that scene in Act 4 in the library is this amalgamation of, I'm sure, lots of conversations that they probably had where he revealed little bits about himself and the abuse and things. But we move really quickly, so we have to get into a state where that feels like a trusting atmosphere. And one thing I will say is that I really struggled with the use of the camera at that point, for me as an actor, which I've been told and I agree with now, isn't what the audience is getting. But there's a really weird thing with the use of the camera. I think I'm the only person that does it. That's why I struggled with it. I'm the only person that picks up a camera and puts it on the person who's they're talking to. And while they're talking about such intimate things and saying you can't tell anyone, it always felt really horrible for me to pick that up, and like I felt really exploitative. It felt to me like I was like, oh yeah, tell me your story and I'll broadcast it to these people that are sitting out there. Whereas what's actually doing, and I had to eventually trust, was that it's inviting people. It's from their perspective.
It's just really counterintuitive.
Really counterintuitive for me to be like, don't tell anyone, and I'm like, yep, and I'm focusing in, and I'm like, and trying to engage. And I know Sam really struggled with it initially because he wants to look in my eyes, and it just seemed like because he's looking down the lens. So we're experiencing a really tricky moment there, which apparently is not seen, which is great, and that's what we want. Oh, obviously, well, it changes more for wee DB, but the moment that he comes out to officially to I think anyone is Heather in Brighton.
On the quiz.
And that moment, I know we talked about this moment where she says gay then, and like Sam, like Shuba had this lovely direction of like just this wanting to instinctively move away, because anytime someone called you gay, they were physically attacking you either or verbally attacking you, one of the two, and he'd experienced both. So like just waiting on a reaction makes you go like, this is it, this is over. Like not only is this just over, but you're going to actually reject me in a really horrible way. And then like just this little lean back in when I'm like, okay. And it's just like a really simple, it's the first time he's said what he is out loud and anyone's accepted him. Yeah, huge moment.
I think there's a moment when the majorettes come in, when she's basically sort of saying, no, look, you really have to, you've told me you want to relive, you've got to do this right, so get on with it and relive. There's a bath, get in it, tell your story. Very practical. Patient. I think I do love that line about the medicine is harsh, but the patient needs it in order to live. In my head, I've just decided, well, sod you, I'm going to do Section 28, then we're not having this nonsense. We're not having you become gay because you're not going to sort your life out. In her little narrow-minded way. Sort of, she has those moments when she kind of digs in and goes, helping, we're going to sort you out. Enticing wee DB into basically sending his dad down the Swanee. I mean, it plays out in her head. I'm not sure how it goes to the audience, but that kind of thing of here's a sweetie, what do you want from the handbag? You want the shares? Excellent, now I can sort your dad out and shut Ravenscraig, and you'll be all the better for it. I hope people recognise that how damaging trauma from whatever aspect is, and don't bloody do it. Do you know what I mean? Be kind, because people do lose that little vital spark that was them, and I think that's absolutely tragic and horrible. And
any story that reminds me of how difficult it has been for people to be who I am is a good thing. Like, and that I'm sure there will be younger people coming to see this and things that really aren't aware of that, or it's just a different way of showing that story, and a very specific way of showing that story, and the nuances within that. I think that can only be a good thing.